Hello there, and welcome to the Time Machine with Trish and Mike. I'm Mike.
And I'm Trish.
And we're glad you're back with us once again. I hope that all of my fellow Americans have recovered from their turkey comas, and I hope that all of my Canadian friends have had a pleasant, normal, average week.
We did, with all of the lovely Black Friday sales now under our belts.
Yes, it's nice that I've finally, well, I had started a little bit of my shopping previously to Black Friday, but I always go on. I go on usually a little bit like Thanksgiving morning, like as like some of the turkeys kind of being prepped and everything, and I usually wind up buying some stuff then. But
I'm terrible. I'm always like last minute.
Yeah, and if I'm being honest, there's a high probability that you're going to get your present in January.
It's how it rolls. I'm sorry.
But anyway, did you have a good week?
I did have a good week. Yeah, it was busy. I mean, school, start of Advent. So my girls and I put up the tree.
Nice.
Yeah.
When do you guys wrap up for like Christmas break, winter break, whatever you call it?
I think this year our last day at my school is the 21st. So from the 22nd until the 4th, we're off.
Okay. And then you have school no, you're off the following week too, right?
Yeah. Till January 4th.
Okay, because like the schools here get off I think the 17th.
Oh, it's so nice and early.
And then they go back the 4th, I believe.
Oh, so you guys got a real long break.
Yeah, we usually get like 2 to 2.5 weeks, depending, kind of how the calendar falls. Like I can remember as a kid, sometimes we wouldn't get out till like the 22nd, but we wouldn't go back until like the 6th.
Yeah.
It just kind of depends, like
it's always nice getting those extra days.
Yeah.
Well, and teaching right before Christmas is absolutely garbage. Like kids are out to lunch. The kids
don't care. Yeah.
They don't care. And realistically, like as a teacher, you're not starting anything new because you'll then just have to play catch up over the 2-week break. So I tend to do like assessments a few days before the break is over. And then kids inevitably leave early for holidays anyway. Yeah. And then you're just doing kind of like, hey, Christmas around the world or holidays in general around the world at this season. Because of course it's not just all Christmas. And, doing kind of like fun spelling games or fun reading activities.
I would remember in high school, we, so like Christmas break was the end of the first semester. Mm-hmm. And so do they call them semesters up there? The different halves
so we
of the
have,
year?
Yeah. It depends on which school, like if your school has terms or semesters, but we interchangeably use the terms.
Okay. So first semester would end, when Christmas break happens. And so we would take our semester exams the last 3 days of school. So what we would get is instead of having a typical like 6-period school day, where you're in each class for 40, 50 minutes, however the schedule worked out, we would only have 2 classes a day.
Okay.
So like we'd have like say first and second period one day, third and fourth one day, and then fifth and sixth one day. And we'd have these classes for like 2 hours for you to take your exam, and then we'd get to go home.
Yeah.
At like
that's
12.
always so nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was like weird my freshman year when I first did that. I was like, this is kind of weird. Like it's cool.
Like we can just go home.
It's like we get to go home now. Like, okay.
Yeah.
I like this. I could do this.
Yeah. When we get to do that with our junior high kids, they're always like, they feel so grown up. They're like, ooh, I get to leave.
Yeah. And then it's weird at the end of the year because, you're taking your 6th period exam as your last, exam. And so I was usually pretty lucky that my 6th period class was usually pretty enjoyable. So
nice.
It's like my senior year, my 6th period class was keyboard, like piano keyboard.
Right.
So like that was fun. Like at least I got to of course my senior year was weird because we've totally gone off on a tangent. We do have history stuff for you, but because like my senior year of high school was like I did our exam, but then we still had like chorus concerts that weekend, and then we had a awards ceremony, and then we had a baccalaureate. Like there was still for like the
so
next week and a half, we were basically still back at school, not for full days, but we were back here and there for various things. So it was like we were done, but we weren't done. So anyway,
Yeah.
That's my ramble for right now.
See, in ours, like we went right up to the end and then you wrote exams and then it was like prom, grad, bam, like done, summer vacation.
See, we had our prom would be like probably about a month and a half ish before we'd get out of school.
Okay.
Like
no.
our prom would be like late April and we'd get out of school like mid to late May. Although
I remember
we got out like a week earlier or so, like week and a half earlier than the school did, you know.
Yeah, we had
Seniors
like,
did.
it depended on when you had your exams, if you were out
Mhm.
earlier or not. But I remember like prom was on my birthday. So that was June 23rd. And then I
Oh,
think,
we're done with school by then.
yeah, no, not
Way
us.
before then. Yeah.
And then there was, because it was funny. It wasn't a religious school, but we grew up in a very Catholic town. So then on the 23rd was a Friday, which was my birthday, I think. It's Friday or Saturday. And then a Sunday, there was a church service that you could go or not go, depending on whatever. And then the 26th was our actual grad.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we go late.
Late June. Yeah. No, we're done. There was a while that we would actually get done before Memorial Day, which I forget. I know Labor Day is Family Day up there. That's the one in September.
Well, we have no Family Day
No.
for us in Alberta's February.
Then what is it you have? Because you have something on our
Excuse me.
Labor Day. What's the
Labor
holiday?
Day is Labor Day's in September.
Yeah.
Labor Day.
You have Labor Day.
Yeah. And then when you have Memorial Day, we have Remembrance Day
Okay.
in November.
All right. And then Canada Day, I know, is July 1st and we're July 4th. I thought there was something that
we have Victoria Day in May.
When is that?
It's the third Monday in May is Victoria Day.
So
we get it off.
That's before our Memorial Day. Because our Memorial Day is the last Monday in May.
Oh, you have Memorial Day and then Veterans Day. I always confuse the two.
Veterans Day is in November. That's Remembrance Day.
That's
for
what
you.
it is.
We just had that. That's with the poppies.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I always think Memorial Day should go with Remembrance, right? Like it makes sense in my brain.
Makes sense. I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's kind of the start to summer festivities, Memorial Day, right? Where you guys do tailgates and stuff.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of the Memorial Day is like the kickoff to summer, basically. Right. And then Labor Day is kind of the last big bang for summer.
Yeah. That's where like people close up their cottages here and stuff, cabins.
Yeah. Like, I mean,
winterize them.
Like the kids here have already been back in school for a few weeks by the time we get to Labor Day, but it's just kind of like the unofficial end of summer, you know?
Yeah. And seeing our kids just start around Labor Day, either just before or just after. So, but speaking of Memorial Day and Veterans Day and Remembrance Day again, it does lead us into our two stories. It's a rough episode a little bit.
Well, we've had a few of them during the course of this show, but they're significant anniversaries this year.
Yeah.
So
and they're interesting.
Fit. Yeah.
Well, yours is more significant. Mine, the 100th anniversary was already 5 years ago. So, but December 6, 1917, we're of course talking about the Halifax explosion. So Halifax, for those of you that don't know, is the capital of my home province of Nova Scotia. The Nova Scotia. I don't know why I went Minnesota there. I guess from a callback from last week, talking about Turkey. Or no, It wasn't Turkey, Minnesota. It was like Plymouth.
Plymouth City, Minnesota. Yeah,
that's what it was.
And why is it we do it with Minnesota? Like it's not
and nothing else.
It's not like Wisconsin. It's Wisconsin, maybe.
Wisconsin.
You know, or it's like, but nobody does it with Montana. It's like, oh, I'm out in Montana. I don't know why I'm British all of a sudden. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Minnesota, eh? I mean, maybe because it's so close to, but and all the northern states are close to Canada because you're on the border. I don't know.
There is something though. There's something I saw a linguistic specialist. We're now back off on a tangent, but there's a linguistic specialist who did talk about like that specific accent and where it comes from and how it's connected to other parts of like Canada and the US.
Like, wouldn't it make sense if people in Detroit spoke Canadian accents? Because it's all across the river from Windsor, Ontario, you know.
Mm-hmm. But I think it involves like who originally settled those areas from which part of Europe,
I guess.
And even within,
got to go back to
like
that.
Even in Scotland, there's specific dialects. Like if you're from Isle of Skye versus Inverness, they're going to be different.
Yeah, it's like there's no real crossover between Seattle and Vancouver. I mean, I guess maybe you get some people who say Vancouver or something, but it's not real.
Not the same.
Anyway,
back to
Halifax.
Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Which is so Halifax is about 2.5 hours away from where I grew up. And it is one of the world's largest and deepest ice-free, naturally occurring harbors in the world. So very, very significant. It's been used for centuries by the indigenous Mi'kmaq people, then the French settlers. And then, of course, after the wars between France and Britain, Britain gets a hold of Nova Scotia and they develop Halifax City. It's been really significant for a bunch of stuff, right? During World War I and II, it was very, very important for ships leaving. It's actually the first inbound and last outbound port of call in Eastern North America that has transcontinental railway connections. So obviously significant location.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And during World War I, there are ships coming and going that are bringing resources to the war. It's a very busy, it's a big harbor. Like if anyone's ever visited, there's kind of 3 sections to it that there's different parts that they talk about, but it's a very big harbor, but it was very busy. And at this time frame, they also have the anti-submarine nets that are going across the entrance to the harbor so that the German U-boats couldn't come in, which took time. You had to like lower the gates, the water gates, and then let ships go through and then raise them again. So on December 6th, it's a clear morning, which makes this whole situation really confusing of how it even kind of happened. There's going to be a Norwegian vessel called the Imo that left its mooring in Halifax Harbor for New York City. At the same time, there's a French freighter ship, the Mont Blanc, with its cargo that's coming into the harbor. So these ships are trying to pass each other. Now, the Mont Blanc is holding a lot of explosives. It's got 2,300 tons of pyraceric acid, 200 tons of TNT, 35 tons of high octane gasoline, and 10 tons of gun cotton, which I guess is very explosive and flammable and whatever. Yep. So it was supposed to join a military convoy that would be escorted across the Atlantic Ocean. Now, I don't think under current military ruling that they would have allowed all of these explosives on one ship in like the same area of the ship.
Probably not, and probably because of this very reason you're about to explain to us.
Yeah. So it's at 8:45 in the morning that the 2 ships collide, setting the acid ablaze. The Mont Blanc is then propelled towards the shore by the collision, and the crew rapidly abandon the ship without any success to alerting kind of the harbor. So people don't really know what's going on. They just like see these ships, one's on fire, one's floating away, one's badly damaged. And so the fire department goes down to help deal with it. It's right when businesses are opening up and kids are going to school because it's early in the morning. And within 20 minutes, there's a blinding white flash and the Mont Blanc explodes. So the massive explosion is going to kill more than 1,800 people, injuring another 9,000, including blinding at least 200 people. And it basically destroyed almost the entire north end of the city of Halifax, including more than 1,600 homes. So if you go to Halifax today on that section of the city, you'll notice really interesting architecture where a lot of the houses have like concrete enforcement built into the homes because they were really worried that something like this would happen again.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you can see it even in today. The resulting shockwave shattered windows 50 miles away, and the sound of the explosion could be heard hundreds of miles away. I remember my grandma, who grew up in Newfoundland, talking about how like she insisted that china cabinets in Newfoundland like shook. Whether or not that actually happened or not, it was always a story she told me.
What's like here how some people in Florida will feel earthquakes sometimes because we get them not really in Florida per se, but like out in parts of the Caribbean or maybe sometimes like South Carolina might get one or something. And people here can sometimes feel them. I've never felt one. And I'm not talking like full on tremors, but like.
But yeah, you swaying a little bit or whatever.
Yeah, or just like a little, oh, why did that shake? That was weird, kind of thing.
Well, and we just had an earthquake in Alberta a couple of weeks ago. I have earthquake envy because sitting in my basement, I didn't feel a thing. My friend was sitting in her basement, didn't feel a thing. Her husband up on the second floor of their house felt the shaking. And that's like the first time I've ever heard of an earthquake in Alberta. I was like, I live here because we're not supposed to have like natural disasters. But
yeah, all you really get there is what, blizzards?
We can get tornadoes.
Not that often.
And blizzards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tornadoes, like you get tornado warnings at least once. But yeah, mostly just like snowstorms.
Yeah.
But yeah. So like I said, that's
when you hop on a Flair Airlines flight to LA or Orlando.
I was terrified though when I was in California a couple of weeks ago. I was like, man, there's going to be like an earthquake, and I don't know how to deal with that.
Well, you'd be stuck there longer. So either way, as long as
Oh
you didn't
no,
die. Oh
stuck with
darn.
my person longer.
Uh,
So really, what I can boil this disaster down though to, there's an American connection, and I'm not throwing shade,
yes, you are.
but so there is an American steamer by the name of the SS Clara that is the first ship through the submarine nets that morning, just before the Mont Blanc. For some reason, the SS Clara proceeds up the Halifax side of the harbor when it should be going up the Dartmouth side. There's two cities in the harbor, Halifax and Dartmouth. So it should have gone up the other side of the harbor, basically, and it doesn't. There's a historical investigator that says because the Clara had anchored in the Bedford Basin, which is just outside of the harbor, that it was convenient just to stay in that lane. But then the Emo had to swing wide to avoid her. So the one ship's in the wrong place because of this SS Clara. So the Emo, once having moved to the Dartmouth side, should have then, when it was cleared, moved back over to the Halifax side, but it didn't. So then the Emo started nearing the Mont Blanc. So both ships saw each other. Both ships blew their whistles. The, I guess, rule of thumb for shipping at this time is the first person to blow their ship says, like, this is my lane and I'm staying. So the Mont Blanc blew their whistle first. Amazingly, though, the Emo is like, screw that, and blew their whistle and said, I'm staying where I am, which I'm like, okay, massive ships coming towards each other. Maybe let's not have, a pissing match about who belongs in which lane.
Oh, and that's the perfect time to do it.
Exactly. Well, and who even knows? Like, you don't even know what's on these ships. Like, anyway, common sense would dictate. But
it's like we learned, back, when we had the over in
human
the Suez
beings are
Canal,
dumb.
that when the ship the Ever Ready or whatever it was called got sideways, and block the canal. It's like these ships are not easy to navigate. I mean, these are big freaking ships that weigh a ton. They do not move quickly. It's like when you're driving on the highway, you don't pull right in front of a semi truck because he slams on his brakes. He's not going to stop as quick as you. Well,
and in this harbor, there's there's other things you have to avoid. Other ships, there's islands.
That's my point. Anyway, you got to figure out very early on if you're about to collide, like, somebody needs to start trying to do something because you're going to turn this wheel, but it's going to take a while for you to turn
and get past them.
Right.
And that's exactly what happens. They blow their whistles a second time. They try to do some last minute maneuvers to avoid hitting each other. Mont Blanc turns to the Halifax side. That's when the Emo's reversing. The bow slashes into the front, and the rest is history. That they collide and explode and cause this crazy fire, which no one knew what was on the ship either, because of course, war and secrecy, and no one knows what resources are going where. Now, what I thought was interesting, I didn't know this term, the firefighters are going to hop into a state-of-the-art motorized piece of equipment and rush to Pier 6, where the fire is. Do you want to know what that piece of machinery is called?
Steamboat? A dinghy?
It's called,
I don't know,
the Patricia. They hop in the Patricia. I was like, I feel like a piece of history now.
There's jokes, but I'm going to hold off.
I know. Please do. No, unfortunately, this is actually, it's going to become the largest loss of life of firefighters in Canadian history, when 8 are killed instantly, and then a 9th is going to pass away on New Year's Eve of 1917. So like awful, but I just thought it was interesting with the name. I was like, oh, there's a connection. Yeah. So we have an American connection with the ship. We got my name's connection. We have another American connection because there's going to be a bunch of people that become blind. It's actually going to establish the start of the Canadian National Institute for the Blind because of this explosion.
At least something good came out of this.
Exactly, right? And there's a guy educated at the Perkins School for the Blind in Massachusetts, who then calls upon the resources and teachers in Massachusetts for the CNIB, which is very well known in Canada.
Can you say the name of that state one more time?
Massachusetts? Why? How do you say it?
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
Massa.
Massachusetts. Massachusetts. Now I'm like sounding really Massachusetts. That sounds weird in my mouth.
Yeah. Well, you use your mouth to chew. Put the chew in Massachusetts.
This is a good mnemonic device. I wonder if this is a segue into how I say roof and room, and because I say room, but not like broom. I say appropriately.
Well, and you just said resources, instead of resources. But we've gone over.
We're gonna have resources. don't make fun of my regional dialect.
Well, and then we have, there's the whole American language is so like screwed up. How we have two and two there and there, and all that sort of stuff.
That's just English.
Yeah. But they all mean different things. But it's like you pronounce, it's like live and live. They're pronounced
Right. Or
differently.
read and read.
Right. I'm going to read. Oh, I just read.
Yeah. And then you wonder why kids have issues with reading.
Right.
And then
God
another
bless
connection,
people who learn English as a second language. I don't know how they do
Oh, I know. I say that all the time to students that would come from the Philippines. I'm like, I don't know how it's like mouse and mice, house and house is moose and moose. You make sense of that.
No. Yeah, I got nothing for you.
You can't. But our last connection to Massachusetts.
There you go.
is there's a terrible snowstorm the next day after the explosion, because of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
And 40 centimeters or 15 and a half inches of snow is going to fall. Boston hears about the disaster via telegraph, and they quickly organize and dispatch a relief train to go to Halifax, because the two cities have always had really good relations because of trade and the harbors and whatever. And so on the early morning of December 8th, this train arrives and they bring, food and medical supplies and water and personnel to relieve the people who have been basically working nonstop. Now, if you ever see the Christmas tree that Boston uses, that tree is sent to them from the Nova Scotia government as a thank you every year for helping out during the disaster. So I love it. It's kind of like the perfect symbol of the relations between our two nations.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. How our nations are connected.
Eventually, they're going to find out that the two pilots were just idiots, and that was the real cause. But for a long time, people actually thought it was the Germans. They thought a submarine had gotten in, but no.
And I could see where people think that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the investigation is just like, oh, you're both just dumb. Okay.
Yay!
Thanks for causing mass destruction.
Right? Not cool.
Not cool.
Now, speaking of not cool, that kind of takes us to our next exciting, uplifting topic. December 7th, 1941. I don't think I have to tell people what that date is. I think most people know. Mm-hmm. But it was 80 years ago. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, thus bringing the United States into World War II.
My students always think it's so funny because just over Remembrance Day, we were talking about the timeline of the wars. We do World War I and then World War II. And both times, of course, your country enters late into the wars. And they're like, what? Why did this happen? And with World War II, I'm like, hey, this is why. Again, European war, America's like, I don't really want to deal with your stuff, Europe.
Right. And that's always been one of America's benefits to becoming a global power was because we were isolated. You can have wars in Europe all the time and they don't really bother us. And this one didn't bother us because, this is 1941. World War II had been going on for a few years. Mm-hmm. We were neutral. We weren't doing anything. And then Japan, to their credit, take us out so we don't interfere with their planned, military actions in Southeast Asia. Yeah. Because they were going to go after like the United Kingdom and places that had territories there. So I get it. I get where Japan's coming from. I'm not, of course, condoning it or anything.
Well, and there was a lot of pressure for your government to join too, especially with the German U-boats attacking like American ships in the Atlantic Ocean. And so like Japan kind of knew it was kind of happening that you guys were going to be entering.
Yeah. And so the attack commenced at 7:48 Hawaiian time, which that's, as you were talking about the Halifax thing happened about 8:45. I got to think all this like crazy stuff always happens in the mornings.
Well, it's either early morning or like late at night, like where people are sleeping and not able to fully rouse themselves,
Yeah. And it's like even 9/11 that happened at, 8 in the morning, well, I think the planes were being hijacked at that point. They didn't crash till a little bit later, but
it was another morning activity. You're right. People heading off to work, doing their thing.
Yeah. So 353 Imperial Japanese aircraft targeted, obviously base at Pearl Harbor. Of the 8 U.S. Navy battleships present, all were damaged, 4 of which were sunk. All but the USS Arizona were later raised. Of course, that's the USS Arizona is the memorial out in Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, I've been there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a very eerie feeling on the.
That's what
you
I've
get
heard.
A ship out to the memorial. Yeah, it was really, really nice. Like, obviously, as a history buff.
Yeah.
I'm like totally in the moment. But it was really interesting. And there's still like, you can see oil still seeping out of the ship.
That's crazy to think all this time later. A total of 188 U.S. aircraft were destroyed. Unfortunately, 2,403 Americans were killed. Another 1,178 were wounded. Interestingly enough, though, and I don't know if this was just poor planning by the Japanese, which I say that because this was very well coordinated, but for some reason, places, important base installations like the power station, dry dock, shipyard, maintenance, fuel, torpedo facilities, they weren't attacked.
Yeah, which is weird.
It was like you just took out our ways to attack you, but you didn't. Like, I don't know, like, wouldn't you want to?
You think you would have deviated a squadron to be like, look, you deal with this. But I think they were so focused on the ships, right? Like that was their goal.
That was their goal. And so that way, you can't, even if we don't bomb your headquarters, you can plan to get us, but you can't get us now because we've taken, like, it's going to take you weeks or months to get more planes out here to come and attack us.
Well, and weren't they also like the airship carriers were supposed to be in the harbor? This is where people get into conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
But then they were out on a mission, like in the Pacific. So they weren't actually docked in the harbor. So who knows? Like, I just know they seemed very hyper focused on your ships.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it makes sense. Take out the ships so you can't attack. But so Japan announced declarations of war on the United States and the British Empire later that day, which at this point is now December 8th in Tokyo. But the declarations were not delivered to the following day. Immediately upon learning that the territory, because that's the thing, they did not just attack Pearl Harbor, they attacked U.S. and UK based or owned held entities over in like the Philippines and Guam and Singapore and Hong Kong. It wasn't just Pearl Harbor. So immediately upon learning some of their territories were attacked, England's like, yo, Japan, we're coming for you, and declared war. And then the following day, December 8th, the U.S. Congress declared war, obviously, with the president.
You have to. What else are you going to? There's no other choice but to be like, all right, we got to retaliate and we're under attack. And
that's when you have President Roosevelt's famous, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy speech. So interesting. And this is something I don't know that a ton of people necessarily know. So because the attack on Pearl Harbor took place before a declaration of war by Japan had been delivered to the United States, they brought this to trial in the Tokyo trials, and it was determined that it was a war crime because you didn't tell us that you were going to attack us. And so Japan said that the attack would not commence until 30 minutes after Japan had informed the U.S. that it was withdrawing from peace negotiations, but the attack began before the notice was delivered. So Tokyo transmits this message to the Japanese embassy in Washington, but because of the secret nature of the message, it had to be decoded, translated, typed up. And, this is a Sunday, that sort of thing's not going on. We don't have the technology near like we do now. And so the ambassador did not deliver it until after the attack had begun. But even if it had been...
Like, that ambassador lost his job.
Even if it had been, though, it's like, what could you really have done?
Yeah, nothing. Not at that time.
I mean, because they state that, they were going to do it 30 minutes before. Well, you're barely scrambling fighters at that point. And even then, you don't know what's coming for you. You don't have time to plan a defense.
You would still just be getting messages off to your bases. Yeah.
Right. And then you've got to get this message from Washington to Pearl Harbor. And again, this is not 2021 technology we're talking about here. So.
Well, and the way that they had set up the base in Pearl Harbor, particularly the airfields, like they put all the planes in the middle because they were so worried about like local spies.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Nope.
They were so worried about local spies that they wanted them in the middle of the airfield so they could see if anyone approached the planes. So even just scrambling and moving those planes would have taken like more than 30 minutes.
So several Japanese military officials were charged, for these war crimes for this attack. One defendant was found mentally unfit for the trial and charges were dropped. Two defendants died of natural causes during the trial because, they were older.
Yeah.
6 defendants were sentenced to death by hanging for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and crimes against peace. 1 defendant was sentenced to death by hanging for war crimes and crimes against humanity. and 16 defendants were sentenced to life in prison. 3 died in prison, while the other 13 were out on parole by the mid-50s.
It's like you think about all the people that were involved. Like I would not have assumed that many individuals would have been charged and found guilty. And you think just like higher uppers.
Yeah. But so it was, there were several members. I mean, they were mostly, generals, and I don't know off the top of my head the Tokyo or the Japanese military rankings and history, so I'm not going to get into all that. I could try to read you a list of names here, but we would be here till, next Thursday. So, of course, the next day, President Roosevelt formally requested the Declaration in his infamous speech that was addressed to the nation and Congress at 12:30 on December 8th. So we're talking really about 24 hours later, because it happens just before 8 a.m. That would have been just before 1 p.m. on Sunday Tokyo. Here. Right.
Oh, yeah.
In the East Coast. So, 12:30, you've got Congress together and you're addressing the nation, declaring war or requesting to declare war. So that's the thing with America is Congress has the issue or the power to declare war. It's not the president. Congress can declare the war, and then the president can oversee the war.
Right.
But presidents can take military action even without Congress, but that gets into a whole thing. But the Constitution declares that Congress is the one. So you have to have the official declaration, which was quickly brought to a vote and passed in the Senate and passed in the House by 110. So it's like he just said he wants to do this. 40 minutes later, we got it ready to go, and it's passed. So it goes through 82-0 in the Senate and 388-1 in the House.
So who was the one that held out?
Glad you asked. Montana Republican Congresswoman Jeanette Rankin cast the only vote against the declaration of war, and there were people who were not happy with her for doing this. So she was in 1917. She was one of 56 members of Congress to vote against the declaration that triggered America's entry into World War I.
So she's had a record of like pacifism, basically.
Correct. And so she refused. People in Congress like, hey, change your vote. We all need to be united on this. We need to do this. And she says, as a woman, I can't go to war, and I refuse to send anyone else.
Oh, that's an interesting stance.
So here's where this gets further interesting. So after the vote, reporters followed her into the cloakroom. She refused to make any comments. She winds up hiding in a telephone booth until the U.S. Capitol Police can come clear out so she can get out. Now
she was harassed that badly.
Yes. 2 days later, they said, even if you don't want to vote for it, just don't vote.
Right. Just abstain.
So 2 days later, we have a similar declaration of war against Germany and Italy. Because Japan, we're coming for you. Italy and Germany, y'all, we're gonna come get you too now because we done pissed us off.
You're a team over there, and so we're ticked off. Yeah,
exactly. It's like your buddy over here just blindsided us. We're coming for you too. So on that vote, she abstained.
Okay, interesting.
So President Roosevelt signed the declaration at 4:10 that day, and the rest is pretty much literally history.
Yeah. See, that's crazy. And for the amount of planning and everything that went into it, they even designed torpedoes that were slightly different. We talked about the Halifax Harbor being one of the deepest naturally occurring. There's actually a shallowness to Pearl Harbor that they preferred because it actually protected from torpedoes coming in from airplanes, right? If they dropped it.
Because you can see the Arizona in the water.
Yeah, you can. It's not.
It's not that deep.
No. It's amazing that those big ships could even get into the harbor when you think about it, just because like you said, you can see it from the top. Parts of it are actually sticking out of the water. So the Japanese had to design special fins on their torpedoes so that they wouldn't go too deep in the water and then kind of skim along the surface to actually hit the ships. So it's a lot of planning. Hitler did not know kind of what Japan's plan was, and they were ticked off. I mean, I'd be pretty ticked off too if someone playing my game just changed the rules suddenly,
right?
Involved a massive world power into a war.
It's like, hang on here a minute. We weren't quite ready for. What are you doing?
Yeah. Wait. Whoa.
It's and I mean, we can get into a whole alternate universe of history on this, but
it's fascinating to think about.
What if we never do get?
Yeah. What if you never Yeah. What if you never go into the war? What would happen?
What if we decided to go drop the bombs on Germany instead of Japan?
Yep.
Who knows how different the world would be at this point.
Or like, what if Japan had been able to take out and you guys ended up like, isn't that the Man in the High Castle, that TV show on Amazon?
Is it? Yeah, that's if Germany won World War II. Right?
It's if Germany, yeah. And like all along California, Japan controls California and Germany controls like the other part of America.
I've wanted to watch that show. Maybe I need to. Maybe this will inspire me to go watch it at some point. But
yeah, I started getting really into it. It was interesting, and then it got a little strange, and so then I like kind of lost interest. But yeah, that's the one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's the interesting thing about history is like the what ifs of how things can unfold.
There was a show called, I think it was called The Americans a few years ago, where it was what if Russia won the Cold War? It was kind of,
that's always interesting too.
Interesting. Again, same thing. It's like, sounds like I'd love to watch both of these. I just haven't. That's the thing. I need more time to watch shows.
There's not enough time to watch all the really interesting things that we want.
Yeah. And there's not enough time for this episode because, well, we're out of it.
We done.
Yeah. Are we just going to sit here or are you going to do the thing?
Do you want me to do the thing?
Do the thing. People like it when you do the thing.
If you have any questions, concerns, queries, or freakouts, you can email us at thetimemachinewitricia@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram. You can leave us a voice message on the Anchor app and we can include you in our show, which we would love to do.
Yes. And we'll do all that if you do that for us. And we'll see you next week right here on the Time Machine. I don't know what's wrong.